invitation here is to take a few breaths and just come into your body. Because this is very much an embodiment practice and connecting the truth and the wisdom that's already here, the truth of your design, and as well as your conditioning and the trauma and the different things in your past that are, let's say, interfering with the coherence of your design at this moment. But it's all part of the plan. It's all welcome. It's all welcome here. Yeah, I just want you to know that you're all welcome and take a deep breath in through the nose and slowly out through the mouth. And through the nose, just sinking into that heart space, into that center. Knowing that all of you is welcome here, light and shadow. The shadow is something we get very familiar with this work. It's part of our way in the shadow keys of becoming orientated by not turning away from it, but turning toward it and welcoming it and befriending it and loving it and awakening to what's within it, bringing the light of our awareness into these parts that are unseen, repressed, rejected, hidden. And maybe we'll start with Gear. If you could just say in a line what brought you here and whether you have the 20 or the 30 in your chart or what brought you here, essentially.
What you brought me, your message brought me here. You
Okay.
invited me, and we have a few talks with each other, and it's nice work you do it. We think a little bit different, some things, but we are in alignment for
Hmm.
me. So it's very nice what you to do. And you asked something about the numbers?
Yeah, do you have 28 or 30 in your human design chart?
No,
No. Okay.
both.
Well, part of what I want to teach is that we have all the channels. They're all there, and it is mentioned. It just isn't gone into it at great depth. Ra says it frequently that just because something's undefined doesn't mean you don't have it.
No.
No. So we have it. It's just we're not necessarily wise in it. It's not consistent energy. And it's likely that we're going to learn a lot about it in this lifetime if we don't have it, in fact. So part of the shadow keys is to make people aware that of what we're here to learn, not just about who we are, like what our definition is, what we're designed to be, but what we're here to learn in this lifetime. So it's actually a journey and exploration into the undefined parts of our chart, which is the unconscious. And so that's where our greatest potential actually lies. There's infinite
Yeah.
potential in the undefined aspects of our chart, actually, where we become wise. And Raz says it himself that that's often where we become most wise because it's where we're forced to learn. You know, we often take for granted what's inherently our gifts. It's even hard to notice them, but human design and Gene Keys do a good job of helping turn our awareness to what our gifts are. But I want to offer us where we are focus on where we're struggling most, actually, our life's greatest challenge, and turn towards that. And that's really the theme today. And you may not notice that when I talk about purpose. Everyone thinks about purpose as what we're here to do quite often, right? But purpose is really about who we are fundamentally and what makes us most feel alive. Because when we're doing, this is where the doing part comes in. When we're doing something that's in total alignment with who we are, we feel alive with purpose. And it's a feeling of excitement to live in alignment to that truth. The converse is like what we'll talk about with the 28, the shadow of the 28, is most closely associated with the type 6 in the Enneagram. And the type 6 is known quite often as the skeptic in Enneagram language. And this is really about conformism, about playing it safe, living a life of security. And actually, even 28 is known as the risk taker. It's our ability to take risks and leaps of faith in life and, you know, adventure. But the shadow is more about risk aversion when it comes to the type 6. It's not taking risks, it's playing it overly safe. It's living for security and from fear-based thinking, which is often the mind cares about survival and security, rather than love-based thinking or love-based feeling or even instinctual gut-based things. So it's rather than coming from heart and soul, we're coming from mind, we're coming from conditioning, what other people are doing, or what we think is going to bring us safety, which is not what our heart is truly desiring, rarely, unless we need to calm down and go the other way. But so to bring it back, I want to just say that that's what we're going to get into. We're going to get into purpose, how to come alive by addressing purpose and what brings purpose alive in someone. And it's really about facing your life's greatest challenge. And quite often it's like undergoing dark nights of the soul, which really brings you alive with purpose. And it's no surprise that in Gene Key's language, the vocation, I know this is a different sphere than purpose, um, comes from the core wound, right? It's always there are challenges, our difficulty, our pain that brings us most alive and brings us the most light and clarity about who we are and what we're here to do. And so, while the vocation sphere, the unconscious Mars is the literal manifestation of what we're here to do, the work, the unconscious Earth or the purpose sphere, I'll just keep going, is about what brings us alive in the body. Who are we in our being? Um, yeah, what our nature is. And this is often the deepest journey in the shadow keys for sure, but also maybe gene keys is among the deepest because the unconscious earth holds our greatest potential for healing and embodiment. Because the earth represents the body, about means being a human in a body in form right now. Welcome, Callie. Feel free to join with your camera and join us. Um, so And one of the streams in Shadow Keys is focusing on is kind of the Tantra message of becoming embodied, because through embodiment, we become more alive. Actually, we feel more alive, we feel more excited, we have more care, more impetus to act in the world and make change and to play our role, to play our divine part in this cosmic play, which is where everyone actually has a role to play. Everyone is integral. Everyone is equal. Everyone has a piece to play. But most are not going to step up to do it, right? And that's okay. But the ones called to need to understand that it's only through the body that they will really come alive into their purpose, you know? Because that's where the mission's all, it's in our genes, it's already there, it's in our design, but it's through the body that will really come alive with it. And so for me, the 28 to the 38 is probably the most prominent channel for coming into embodiment. It's also probably the most challenging channel there is, but with great reward. And so I'll go into a few examples with that. But first, maybe I'll tell you a little bit about my story and about how I came to this. And well, first, where will I begin? I'll begin with my Kundalini awakening. So a couple of years ago now, um, I had a very violent and brutal Kundalini awakening where the twin snakes, the Shakti energy, moved up my spine and came to my pineal gland in a couple of days. And it was very forced, on my behalf. And so there was definitely some shadow driving that, but also curiosity. So there was light and shadow driving it, but it ended up being a very negative, hellish experience, in fact. Um, and it came 4 years, it was a hell on earth experience, and it was equivalent to, I don't know, what you hear about bad trips. It was like a psychedelic trip. And, but rather than 8 to 12 hours, it was 3 months. Um, 3 months of basically living in a different dimension or not in a body and experiencing my own version of purgatory or hell, where I was tormented by shadows and unconscious demons and all sorts of different things. Morgan, hello, welcome.
Hi everyone.
Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm just giving a little backstory just to catch you up to what brought the Shadow Keys forth and my particular, let's say, life's work. It was like a dark night of the soul, but it was my second one. And really, in that, the Shadow Keys transmission got crystallized, and the desire for the to do the Shadow Keys came through very strongly, as well as direct experience of it. And I don't know if you've all heard many stories about teachers of various systems, but very rarely do they just come up with it, you know. They often have to live it. And unfortunately, well, fortunately now, but for me, it was quite a brutal experience, like living the shadows. And in that 3 month bad trip or Kundalini awakening experience, I was experiencing what I felt was hell for me. So living in terror, living in panic, and experiencing all sorts of shadow vibrations that were way below what is typical. That's been quite described well in human design and gene keys, like very intense experience. Something experience you as a human typically wouldn't be imagined unless you grew up in a war zone. And I do have to say it's like it was like that kind of terror I was because my ego was so disorientated, dislocated. Every day I was waking up in a different dimension. I had no idea the rules of this reality. And I was being attacked psychically and all sorts. And I just was lost, like lost at sea for months. And I didn't know if I'd ever make it back. Um, but a couple of things kept me grounded. One was the Gene Keys. That was a kind of Bible for me. So reading specifically as well about the 61, I don't know if you know that, that's the shadow of psychosis, which is a very shamanic shadow. Actually, I don't know if you know about shamans, and I'm a shaman. And it is very archetypal for a shaman to awaken through psychosis. I'd already had my awakening. This 4 years prior, I had an awakening to a heaven on earth experience. And what I didn't realize at the time, through my healing journey, I went on what's called a descent. So it was 4 years of like self-discovery, shadow work, healing that I actually really enjoyed. But little did I know it was actually taking me down deeper and deeper and deeper into all my trauma, which I healed from this lifetime. I just was naive at that time as to how much pain and trauma is stored in the energy body or the soul or the causal body. I wasn't aware. I was trying to complete healing in my naivety, unaware that we carry karma and we have many other lifetimes, some of them pretty fucked up, that we carry. And so I had to contend with all that during my awakening. All right. And whether we know it or not, we are all contending with that now. So I had to do it very directly with a visceral experience of it. But we are all held back by our karma from past lives as well. It's in the body. And if you've ever struggled with a repeating pattern, you can be sure that it's most likely more than this lifetime. It's actually a pattern that's occurred further back in the fractal, like further back in previous lifetimes. This is a repeating pattern. And so that's what makes certain shadows very hard to deal with. And one of the Shadow Keys missions was to help people really understand their shadow and address the shadow proactively, proactively. Not just through awareness, but the other three pillars, which are action, taking action toward it, and I'll get into that, and acceptance, which is the real meeting of the shadow, of the darkness, of the pain, whatever it is, and the loving acceptance of it. And so that's the real healing part. That's what I bring to it as a shaman, as a healer, but how can we accept ourselves at the deepest level instead of running away or moving away from our shadows? Someone's getting called. That's okay. All right, see you, Lisa. How can we turn toward them and learn from them and heal them and integrate them? Because they do have our gifts and they do have lots of learning and messages for us and empowerment. Um, so one more thing is that, the Gene Keys talks about focusing on the light, the gift, and the siddhi, primarily 90% on those areas and 10% on the shadow. And there's a real reason for that. It's a real methodology to focus on the light and assimilate that so that you awaken and remember that, right? But all the while, you're kind of avoiding the shadow. And he doesn't say that's a good thing or anything like that. It's just not the approach Gene Keys is taking. My approach, or the Shadow Keys approach, is reversed. It's actually, how can we face our shadows, like focus mostly on the shadow, in fact, and learn from them, accept them. And there's different things that are gained from that, aside from it has the same function as focusing on the gift. Could you still obtain the gift from focusing on the shadow? Because the gift's already in there, you know? For me, I obtain it quicker, but I am drawn to the dark and I can work with it quite easily. And I don't have much resistance to it. In fact, I'm drawn to looking there, and bringing love there, the light of our awareness into the dark. For me, it's a real self-loving act to look at our shadows and look at our trauma, look at our pain. So as a healer, I like moving into that stuff. But aside from that, it does a couple of core things that are really important. Um, for one, it builds courage, like real courage. And that courage is something, of course, you feel within, but you can bring it to your life outside of here. And courage is really important in this day and age, and just facing life, getting up in the morning and doing what you have to do to face challenge, to face conflict, to take leaps of faith into the unknown and to trust yourself and to trust life. And that's another one. Self-trust is a big one, but also resilience, because resilience is something there's not much teaching about in the spiritual New Age community. But I think it's again getting more and more important in this day and age where actually there's a big push towards the more feminine pole, which is good. But in that, there's a softness, there's an acceptance, and there's not so much, especially in the like both in the general community, in the men's work community, there's stuff on masculinity, but everyone's got a masculine within. Every man, every woman, every uh what do you call it? Transgender, everyone, doesn't matter their makeup, they have masculine, feminine energies in there. And so this approach is far more masculine and it builds things that I know in my youth I had a lot of aversion to. Things like self-responsibility, self-respect, courage, resilience, I said responsibility. Um, these kind of things that really make you very capable in the world, very fearless in the world, and very stable internally. What the masculine energy does for your spirit, for your nature, is create structure and stability within, so you can be rock solid, and actually life can't shake you. Um, you become indomitable so that your nature or your personality is not rocked by challenges in life. You can hold your integrity, um, which is not easy hasn't been easy for people like me, where I've grown up as a type 9 personality, which is very passive and very agreeable. So they're like more inclined to introjection, which is like merging with other people, going with the flow, and not exerting much will on the world. And so often they lose themselves and don't create impact. In shadow, there's a light side, but I'm talking about the shadow. They don't create impact because their identity is not strong and stable, and they're avoiding uh, conflict, which is designed to create stability or create strength. So they're avoiding the very catalysts that are going to help make them strong. That's just their nature. And type sevens as well. First of all, just a quick show of hands. Who knows Enneagram here? Oh, you all do. Very good. Gear, I already know you. Morgan, like what Enneagram types do you identify with, or have you identified within you? I prefer that language.
The Enneagram number 2.
Number two, the giver. Okay, that's definitely relevant here. I know that one very well too. And Moira,
The 2 and the 7. Yeah.
the two and the seven. Okay, great. And I know Gear identifies with some nine, well, at least does now, and the seven. So these are all perfect examples of personality types that don't have that much will, actually. They're not that strong against adversity. They're just not. And but they're connected to strong, I think this time I'll maybe start sharing, right? Let's do that. So let's just use this one for now. Okay, you can all see, yeah? So let's look at the two. So I've got a big two heart, right? The giver, right? Prioritizing other people's needs, um, caring more about the other and their needs rather than your own, right? And so the two can be quite susceptible to listening and catering to other people and people pleasing and fawning and all these qualities, right? Rather than maintaining their own individual truth and their own individual will and integrity. And quite often they're very martyring, self-sacrificing their needs, right? And sometimes that's part of their purpose, right? In light, right? They're giving willingly, but often it's at to their own detriment and to their own ill health and to the detriment of their work and their purpose and all that kind of things. Certainly in the beginning in the shadow, right? And so that's why they're connected to very strong individual types, the four and the eight. The four is the strongest of the individual personality, the uniqueness, right? The power to be unique, to be yourself, and to express your truth and your creative expression. And so what I teach and some Enneagrams teach is that we're not designed to stay here in the two. You're designed to move to the four and to assimilate the wisdom here and to break free of the shadow and the limitation of the two personality structure. You can keep the gifts, especially if they're aligned to your human design, but you want to break free of the shadow and the need, because at the shadow level, the needs of the two, for example, are motivated by a feeling of unworthiness. And so what we want to do is move away from not self or shadow self motivations, which are always motivated by wounds, or they're motivated by limiting beliefs, but both really. So if I believe I'm unworthy of love, I'm going to do things that make me feel worthy of love. That's what the two is about. It's like, but it's complicated. There's the light and the shadow. So while they actually do receive and are great at giving and genuine, compassionate people, sometimes in shadow, they'll be motivated by this not self part, which is actually, I need love, so I'm going to give to others. And that's distortion, right? That's not why we give to others so that we can get love and so that we can get attention, So that's the distortion from the purity of the two. So in its highest light, it is totally selfish, like a Buddhist compassionate monk, right? Totally giving themselves to service, right? But often I can speak for myself here. I'm not a two by nature. I was conditioned to be a two. It was part of my not self programming. And so not all my two, but a lot of my two behavior is limiting me and keeping me stuck and preventing me from embodying what's more true within me, which is 5, for example, right? And they're quite opposed in many ways, the 5, because they're quite selfish with their time and energy. So that's an example, but you can see that's also connected to 8, which is a very strong ego type, very dominant, very assertive. And so there's wisdom here, but it's not going to be comfortable for the 2 to move there. Oh, we've got Louise coming in. Hello, Louise. Hello, welcome. So we're just going an overview. You'll just have to pick up as we go along. But you're welcome to join in, Louise. So we're just talking about the growth that the Enneagram promises, when we move out of our conditioned patterning, who we learn to be or who we're programmed to be. So I'm talking about my journey for the 2. For me personally, and I'll tell a personal story here. I had the greatest resistance to 8s. And so I actually thought 8s were bad because my dad was an 8, right? Because they embody the strongest masculine um, energy, right? I know there's healthy 8s, but I didn't have that modeled for me in my childhood. And so while we can see in our human design program that, and I will get into this later, that our human design programs are conditioning, we can see it's already programmed, but it's also reflected in our real life circumstances. I can see that 8 is actually part of my human design, but it wasn't part of my conditioning because I rejected it and repressed it because it was modeled by my father as toxic. Yeah, go, Morgan. Is that a question?
What do you mean by 8 was part of your human design? How do you know that?
Well, this is what the shadow keys does. So maybe there's so much I'm just running intuitively here, and I'm happy to answer questions, right? Just to go wherever you need to go. But I'm just going to keep going because there's so much to this transmission, which makes it actually very hard to share because there's actually lots of parts. But one of the main things is that there are 64 gates, or actually maybe even 72 now. There's a recent book coming in, which I'm kind of in line with, like 64 or 72 gates, right? And essentially, these are patterns of nature that can be seen everywhere. I don't know if you know that in the human design, gene keys, I Ching, it can be seen everywhere. But I'm focusing on how they manifest through the personality, right? And so there is a real focus here on the mind and the personality. But what I'm adding here is the Enneagram. So the Enneagram is like a zoomed out version of the 64, the 72, which acts like a meta structure. So 8 or 9 gene keys are associated with each of the Enneatypes now. And I've done that through my own inner work, basically my own contemplation, my own channeling, my own experience, and my own projector going into it, right? And my own work with clients and my own, I've been doing this for 2 years and assigning it, and it's been the biggest job. And we're there now. And so I feel much more confident sharing this work. But it was an intuition from the beginning that so like gate 27, that's a type 2 gate. Gate 37, that's a type 2 gate. 13, that's a type 2 gate. And there are, and I can say that for different ones, there's 8 ones. And so one of the things that I knew when I came into Enneagram, which I resonated with immediately, I understood the symbol, I loved the symbol and the journeys that it promised, the 2 to the 8, so on and so forth. I love the personality profiles because for me, that was true. When I read about the 7, I was shocked. I was awed. I was like, that's me. That's what everyone says when they read their Enneagram type. Oh, that's me. I'm like, that's what you feel when you first see it because you feel seen in it. But really, it's not you. It's one of 9 patterns, right? It's not unique. And so the whole idea with human design and shadow keys is about differentiation and individuation. It's like, how do we move away from the patterns in which everyone is conforming to, their patterns of nature, and actually embody the unique diamond that we are, that unique frequency that we are and no one else is. And so human design is about that. Shadow Keys adds far more tools to help us get there. So the deconditioning journey is said to last 7 years in human design, following strategy and authority, which is great, right? That's fantastic that you can follow that to the letter, and in 7 years you'll be embodying your design or be close to it or something, right? For me, I guess it was just my own preferences with the system. I wanted to find shortcuts. And I wanted to learn more about the whole process because I'm a line 1, which if you see here is related to type 5 here, the investigator. It's about investigating very deeply into things in order for me to accept them. And so investigating human design in order to accept it, I wanted to accept it and use it. I actually found out ways that I would do it better for me, right? And so that's what the Shadow Keys ended up being. It started seeing new ways of using the amazing, unbelievable transmission that human design is, which is an infinitely complex system that anyone can use for any purpose. And so really I'm just finding new perspectives and new methodologies within it. And so the promise here with using this system is that you're going to shave years of time off the deconditioning process if you do initiations, which is one of the primary methodologies that I take. And it's not just about saving time, but for me, that's important for some reason, right? I like efficiency. That's also part of my design. So if I like to make things more efficient, I like to solve problems. That's a 5 thing, right? I'm helping people. But for me, what I love about this is it's very empowering because what this does now is make us very aware of our shadows. It increases self-awareness like by orders of magnitude, right? So we're actually going to start through this process of, that's why I share so much on the shadow is like, the more we become aware of the shadow, the patterns of behavior, the more we actually develop the witness and that separation between our witnessing, which is the true self, right? That witnessing awareness, or what Ra calls the passenger consciousness, the witness, and the patterns of behavior that we have become identified with, which is not us, right? We can keep some of it if it's benefiting our totality, if it's actually aligned to our direction, but much of it we're going to have to let go of at some time or another because it's not who we are, right? But developing the witness and becoming aware of the shadows, it all falls away organically. And so one of the promises as well is that we're all here not to stay fixated, to stay the same as a type 1 or a type 9 or type 8, because they're kind of boxes, and they're limitations. And you're a multidimensional being, you're a soul who's had many, many lifetimes, right? And all that can be integrated. And I'm not saying that's a journey for everyone, but that's the potential. The potential is to be totally unique, unlike any other person in the universe or anything in the universe. And the original intention of the Enneagram is to unwind that personality structure. That's what Gurdjieff is teaching. It's about you going, if you're fixated on being a 7, it's about stop being that person, stop playing that role by moving over to be a 1. And that frees you up. If you become a 1, you're not actually becoming a 1. You're just moving over here as a way of deconditioning your 7 because it's opposed. It's in polarity. It's in opposition. The discipline of the 1, the undisciplined nature of the 7. And it's what's called disciplining the personality because the personality is learned. It's a learned thing. It's not who we are. Who we are is spirit, is essence, right? But what's cool is that we need the personality to interface with other people, with the world, to create, to do, and to create, to express, right? But the ideal is the individuated personality is a reflection of our nature. It's not a reflection of our past, our conditioning of our parents. It's a reflection of who we really are. And so that requires deconditioning, or another word is disciplining. So you have to actually discipline the personality to be like who you are because it's trying to be like who it learned to be. So either who it learned to be for your father, who it learned to be for your mother, who it learned to be for society, who it learns to be for culture, you know? All of these forces are outside of us, could be antithetical to our true nature. They could be very, very different. And so that's why it's important not to get identified. And I'll be honest, it's hard. When I find out I'm a two at heart, right? And being kind, a giving person was the thing I loved most about myself because that's what I received most love for. And so it's kind of brutal to give up the part of you that you love most and other people say they love, right? But why do I give it up? Because it's not true for me to do that to the level I was doing it, right? But there's resistance to giving up because it's my need. It's how I get love. And it's how I find significance. It's how I feel worthy. And I've got to the bottom of that wound in a retreat, right? When I had nothing left to give, right? Where I had all the energy sapped out of my body. There was nothing in me to even think about caring for something else because I was so energetically spent. But I was among people and among people I liked, and I felt utterly worthless in that they weren't asking anything from me, but because of my nature was so conditioned to give, I felt worthless because I thought giving is the only way I'm worth anything. My worth wasn't inherent to me at that point, right? And so that's the aim. The ultimate aim is to switch out the motivation. So when I give, it's through conscious choice. It's a real free will decision. I'm not doing it because I'm going to derive my own worth from it, which is subtly selfish, sometimes explicitly selfish. I'm going to give because I'm choosing it. And for me, that's real service. And many people who are conditioned to be two will remain twos, but they have to purify their conditioning so that they really give selflessly, right? And that's a big journey, a big journey. That's what the monks do. You know, they double down on being the servant. They don't decondition by moving to a four or going to an eight. You know, the Buddhist way is to like, no, keep giving until it's pure. You know? And that is another way, but this is not the Enneagram and this is not the shadow keys. It's about deconditioning. All right. Talked a lot there, but I hope you're following. Any questions? Yes,
Mm.
Morgan?
When you do the Enneagram, do you have to choose your number when like you were a child or like as an adult? Because as an adult, I was choosing another number, but when I had to choose like as a me, like a younger me, I was another number.
Well, that speaks to the truth, right? I'm going to show you something from my yet to be published or created ebook, right? This is about my own journey. And so this is not talked about in conventional Enneagram theory very much, right? I'm sure it's in the more mystical schools, or maybe not. I don't know. I've not gone to the mystical schools, so but here's my own journey with the Enneagram, and it's dramatic. So who I am today, showing up as somewhere between a five and an eight, or I feel I'm embodying a five. That's what the Shadow Keys is. I'm a projector. I'm an investigator. I'm a line one. I feel very embodied in my five energy here. And I'm also a line five. And so I'm moving in, but yet to fully embody this eight character, which is the leader, which is, someone willing to be assertive and stand up and be strong, right? That's very leader energy. So that's part of my evolution or my dharma to move there. So I feel that movement towards there. But if you look back, I only became this five around when I was 30 or 31, right? That
Are
was,
you seeing something now? Because I'm not seeing anything.
oh, not seeing it. Thank you for sharing. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. That's what I want to show. Okay. So yeah, I was just talking about I'm embodying this 5 and I'm moving towards the 8. So I'm 36 now. And so since last year, I've been moving into 8 energy and learning the ways of um embodying my leader and being strong in the world and having a strong identity that doesn't fold under pressure and conflict. And I can be a real heretic shouting my message. I know it's to do with power. 8s are all concerned with power, as are line 5s. And so I talked about the 5, but prior to the spiritual awakening, which launched me into the 5, I was very much a 7 from 20s to 30s. I was completely extroverted, focused on socializing, partying, uh, you know, being life of the party, being stimulated. I'm still ADHD. It's lessened from the spiritual work, but I was very ADHD when I was in those years, all over the place, scattered, erratic, but also fun, loved life, was joyous all the time, brought the vibe up, everybody loved me, that kind of energy. You get it? And so that was an identity that I had from 21 to 30, or even before 21, right? That I was very focused on that identity. Why was I doing it? Because it's part of my evolution, it's part of my nature, right? We are evolutionary beings. We, like nature, like plants, like trees, we grow and we change. And the personality is no different unless we become really rigid and stuck, right? We get stuck in a personality structure and we stop growing. And some people do that. But I was growing here, so this was just a natural phase. But also, I was seeking something. What was I seeking? I was seeking love, but love in the form of fulfillment, joy, satisfaction. That was what I was seeking there. And so all my energy and attention was going into joyful, love, social experiences out in the world. I had no inner world. I was not spiritual. I was not academic. The amount of books I read were probably, I could count them on one hand, or maybe 6, right? Really, I wasn't academic. I thought I was kind of dumb. I thought I was kind of more street smart, but certainly not academic. And I couldn't speak to you like I am now. I wouldn't be doing this kind of level of depth of work. But I'm a line 1, and they care about, like, I was not embodying line 1 at all. And during this period, I was the opposite of a line 1, right? I was a line 3, actually. The 7 is much closer to the line 3. I think it's the same, right? So I was out in the world experiencing life. And that part of my personality got satiated, got resolved, right? I didn't need to be that person anymore when I had my spiritual awakening. Why? Because I was fortunate enough to have a heaven on earth experience where I was filled with the most joy, the most bliss. It was a city kind of experience, right? I had a city experience, and the part of me yearning for pleasure got totally fulfilled, and I didn't need to be that person anymore. And so almost overnight, I became a 5, and a fire ignited in me to know the meaning of life, knowing who I was, knowing what reality was. So I literally flipped, and you can see they're connected. This is a natural movement, but many people get stuck in their personality and they don't follow the natural current to where it's going, in, out, out, in. And so the 7's externally focused, the 5's internally focused, and then the 8 is also externally focused again. It's about bringing that wisdom into the world if you're coming from a 5 place, right? It's about enacting that wisdom, not staying locked in the basement like the 5's can do, like being an inventor who never shows their inventions the light of day. So there's a natural movement, but if we go back even before then, I was a 6. I was in a relationship for 10 years that wasn't, it was a safe relationship. It wasn't great. You know, that's all I knew from 17 to 27. I was in, you know, I did what other people told me. I did what was conformist or conventional. Um, I did what my mum advised was good for me, you know? I didn't know what was going on. I just listened. So I played it safe, and that's where a lot of society is. They're kind of just sixes. And it is the nines and sixes are kind of quite conformist, and they are the two most popular enneatypes, right? And so for me, six is just the basic ego structure. I don't like thinking it as something separate. We're all sixes to varying degrees. Some of us go anti-six and they go seven, which is like, I'm not conforming, I'm going to be a rebel. So that's like rather than compliance, they choose defiance. And so there was more of that in me. So it was a natural movement for me to go from six to seven to say, hey, I'm breaking away from conformist. I'm not going to listen to my mum anymore. I'm gonna see what is beyond um traditional structures. So from 14 to 21, but also just before that, it's just the ego. The six is just the ego, in my opinion. So you see this movement. And interestingly, it could go back to two after eight, right? But so does that answer your question, Morgan? Can you tell us a little bit about your story, about what you were?
You mean my Enneagram number?
Yeah, like that story that you were something before and then you changed.
Yeah, so I did a test, and when I did the test, I was a seven. Um, and then I talked with the person who helped me about this, and he said, no, but you have to to choose the number when you were like younger. And I said, okay. And he said, yeah, because this is your signature, like this is your the core of who you are. So I said, okay. So that's it.
See, I don't like that kind of talk, right? The core of you, who you are, is unique, right? There's no one else like Morgan, right?
Mm.
That's what I say quite passionately, right? Because you're not one of these types. I don't know why this is like, and maybe some Enneagram expert will come and tell me, but when I heard that, I was very anti that you're one type at your core. Why? I don't get it. It's not true for me. I don't know if it's because I'm a shaman, but it's not true for me. And it's
We
not true for some others that I've met. Go
can,
on.
we can be a few of them over our life. Like at any age, we can change the number or.
Yeah, well, my proposition is that you're all the types, right? The types are wound up like DNA or a coil in your conditioning, right? It's all conditioned, and it's not just the mind, it's in the heart. We've learned to be if you notice in human design, the ego is in the heart, and that's real. You've got layers of conditioning about who you are, your identity that are not real, but they're there in the heart. They're false self-identity, right? And that can all be unwound through this process, right? You're naturally going to do it through a life of organic growth, right? If you're going with the flow, trusting your life path, you're going to naturally move, right? Um, but we can facilitate that process, or we can at least consciously participate in it to understand ourselves along the way and to help ourselves make the whole process smoother potentially. Um, so the idea is that when you're individuated, you're no longer any type. You could be called what's type zero. See this little circle in the middle
Okay.
where that key meets, where the lines meet? That symbolizes infinity or the 0 point, right? That's when you're your true self, when you're actually not associated with the boxes, right? But you have to travel along the entire Enneagram to get there, which means not just going through the types that you identify with, because I had a tri type. I could very clearly see in the beginning that I was a two in my heart. I had the giving nature. I was a nine in my body. So I had the pacifist in me, the avoidant, the conflict avoidant one in me. And I also had the seven in my mind and in my attitude, you know. And I like that system to work with your conscious parts. and I'll share this with you. This is really helpful if you want to get this down, is that so I could see that very clearly. I can see patterns with it. I'm just natural at this work. I can see shadows and patterns very easily. And I guess that's why what makes me able to teach it. But to help anyone else listening, what you could do is look at your mother. Which type were they? Right? And did you love that? Did you love and accept her, or did you reject her? My mum was a type 2, a caregiver. I loved and accepted her. I modeled after her. So I took on the type 2. So that was very obvious in me. Now look at your father. What was he? Mine was a dad. He was 8. I rejected him because he wasn't healthy. He scared me. So I repressed and rejected my 8. So it doesn't mean I'm not my father. Of course I'm my father. Everyone says this, right? But what I did was repressed my father. So the 8 in me went into my unconscious, and the 8 and the 1 became unconscious in me. They got repressed and rejected. It's like, that's not love. I'm not that. That's what the child does unconsciously. It said, I'm not that. So, but if I'm rejecting these body types, I'm rejecting the 8 and the 1, right? What do I become? I have to become something instead. I became a 9 because my 9 was a response to the 8, because the 8s are dominant, controlling, aggressive. And the 9 is a great strategy to deal with an 8. The 9s are very conflict avoidant. So if you've got an 8 in your household, 9s are very sensitive to what causes conflict. They're very good at keeping the peace and, keeping things in order and balance, right? So, because they don't want to cause conflict, they're avoiding that, right? So that's why I became the 9, right? And that's like a very deep conditioning in me, still here, right? But working on it, right? And you get the point. And the 7 for me came in later life. That was for me a way to get love. That's my most effective strategy to enjoy life. I chose the 7 as a way of, you know, as a response to my conditioning, the 2 and the 9. I'm like, 7 was what my idea of love was, right? So whatever your idea of love is, you're going to lean into that. And it's not always love. Like the 6 leans into, they prefer safety, right? So they're choosing love as safety. It's also love, but they're valuing safety over, say, real love. It's not, it's still love. Um, let's say security. So what are we doing here? What we're doing is playing with polarity here. That's what the Enneagram does. And the shadow keys ups the ante on polarity. And we're going to get into the purpose thing soon, but I find that I'm doing a completely different talk from earlier in the day, the different workshop, but this is also good. Why not? Um, so the 8 and the 9 are opposed, right? They're the 8's dominant, the 9's passive. They're like complete opposites. And so a direct path to awakening, if you're a 9, or like, is to try and become an 8. Like if you want to awaken and if you want to grow really fast, it's like moving into a headwind, right? You're going to encounter so much resistance from life, and it's going to bring up so much fear and so much challenge. It could be a lot. I'm not saying it's necessarily your path, but it has been a path for me. It's about directly facing what's most difficult. And the reason why I did this, probably because of my gate 60 or shadow key 60, right? It's limitation. It's in my unconscious sun. It's my radiance. And I always had this feeling that I was limited in some way. I always just knew that who I was or how I was behaving wasn't my potential. And I felt very constrained by who I was. Obviously, it wasn't who I was, it was who I was pretending to be, or who learned to be. And so I guess I was very determined to overcome limitation. And so for me, directly facing challenges has been the most powerful way to do it. And this is working with polarity and resistance. And okay, I'm gonna pause there. But yeah, any questions on that kind of stuff? No? Okay. Let's see. How are you getting on, Luis? You good? All right. Cool. So, what should we talk? Let's go to purpose then. Have we got no more questions on here?
Can we find our soul mission with all of this?
What's that? Sorry?
Can we find our soul mission, like why we are here with all of this?
Your mission.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, well, it's perfect. We're getting to that now, right? There's two spheres in Gene Keys that are good for mission, right? So there's the vocation, which is the unconscious Mars. And Mars is the planet of action, of doing, right? So that's probably the strongest one for your mission because that's your vocation. It's not what we're talking about today, but we can touch on it, right? So for me, and I'll share this story because it's relevant to the mission. So my vocation is Gene Key 9 or Shadow Key 9, right? And the shadow there is inertia. Inertia is this just floating in space. You have no will in the world, no impact, right? That's a type 9 behavior trait because they've got no will. They're kind of got a dead will. So they've got no willpower. Their whole identity is around not bothering or not causing conflict, to having little impact actually, because it's a survival need for them. So they're not penetrating the world like a type 8. So if you've got 9 in your core wound, you're gonna probably be a type 9 like me. And so for me, being masculine, taking aligned action, um, impacting the world, impacting others, like talking to you like now, I wouldn't be able to do that a year ago, probably even just a year ago, I wouldn't be able to do it like how I'm doing it now. Using my authority, speaking with confidence and conviction. This is all stuff I've learned through asserting authority through coming into my truth and my inner purpose and leaning into that 8, that assertiveness. So 9 in my core wound, right? So what does that mean? That means that I can't take action. Actually, I have no impact, no will on the world. But what's so interesting is that the shadow keys is all about taking action. So what's authentically coming through me is how to have impact in the world, how to be really clear about your direction. These are all masculine traits: direction, action. These things are antithetical to who I was. I was a totally easygoing, go with the flow, don't make choices, very indecisive kind of person all my life because I rejected that masculinity of my father. So interesting that my life's work is all about reinstating healthy masculinity. That's what the life's work essentially is. Yeah, well, I guess the vocation here. So that's what I'm teaching. I'm teaching healthy masculinity in a way, but not just for men, but for women, because they need it probably more than men, right? Because we all have our masculine side and it needs to be in balance. So one of the higher purpose or the highest purpose of the shadow keys is to create divine union between our masculine and feminine, to have balance between all our aspects, all our personality parts, and to find union so that we can find wholeness. And really, this journey between masculine and feminine is a big part of it. So let's look at the other sphere. So that's the vocation. That's where I'd put your eyes to as number 1. Number 2, so if you think about the unconscious Mars or the vocation, that's your external expression of who you are. It's your wound. It becomes your mission. And your purpose is more about your embodiment of who you are. Think about unconscious earth or the purpose sphere as the embodiment of who you are at your core. So it's really about coming deeply into the body, purpose is. And this channel is probably the strongest channel for embodiment. for coming into your purpose. And so you can think about purpose as your human design. It's about total embodiment of your human design. Like you've got a plan, a blueprint of who you are, right? And when you're fully embodying that, you're a walking transmission. You're unique. Your light is shining because you're not being like anyone else. You're going to be vibrant, radiant, and high vibration, right? That's if you choose the light path. If you're choosing to be of service, right? You don't have to. It's a choice. Okay, let's say. Yeah, I can say stuff like that. We talk about shadows here. So type 6, and this is so perfect to talk about embodiment, right? So all you know the Enneagram, type 6 is the ego, and it's the least embodied type in a way. They're the most heady, anxious thinking types. They're always worrying, they're always thinking about the future, you know. In Enneagram, they're taught as head types. But in the shadow keys, they're taught as, yes, head types, but they're spleen types, actually. So they're connected to the fear center. And I think this is probably one of the biggest revelations that there is to understand here, and why the shadow keys is really evolving Enneagram theory, because it's making it holistic. It's like it's helping us understand at a far deeper level about what drives us. Yes, the fear of death, or disaster, or the fear of loss of support, some of the fears that have been talked about for the 6 are still very much true and relevant here. But they're not from the head, they're from the spleen. That's where it comes. They're ancient survival things, right? And so when we learn about the spleen, which is talked about really well in human design, and the gates in there, the 44 is another one, the 32, and the 28. There's quite a lot of type 6 spheres in the spleen. So that's why it's the head of the fear center. It all makes sense. It correlates. And, that's why I love this. It's actually just seeing the patterns and the connections. It's not conflicting. It's just seeing the connections. So we got 28. And so what I also like about this transmission, of course, is that it expands what's been said in Gene Keys and human design. It offers alternative perspectives. So we think about, I can just share a bit about my process as being the conduit for this transmission, where it's embodied in me, since that Kundalini awakening. I received the cities that I need to talk about. I received the hell, the opposite experience, the shadow and the wisdom. It was instilled in me within those 3 to 6 months of terror that I experienced. I had that, it's in me. So now my job is to stop. What I was doing prior to that was 4 or 5 years of study. So I was absorbing information, learning from many different fields, Hermeticism, Gene Keys, Law of One, anything that interests me. I was hungry for knowledge. But now I'm in a process of transmitting. So that's like radiating my purpose, what's already in me now. So it's, first of all, overcoming the belief I'm not enough, right? And that I still have to learn saying, no, I am enough, and I'm ready to share now. I'm ready to uh just like be the conduit for this work, right? And part of it is like realizing that there's so much to this. There's infinite knowledge here. And as vast as Gene Keys and human design is, it's still only a fraction of what's actually there. And so when I put the Enneagram as a lens on top of human design or Gene Keys, I get more information. It just comes through me now. It's like putting a different lens on your camera, and I start to see new things starts to come to me. And I'm like, okay, great. So now I know way more about the 28. The 28 in human design is talked about in its light primarily. It's called the game player, and it's about risk taking, being adventurous, right? And so that's not a type 6 at all, really, unless you're a counterphobic 6, which is a smaller population, right? which for me is a more advanced stage of the six. It's saying, I don't want to live in fear anymore because the six are actually the most risk averse and they're very concerned about taking uncalculated risks. They're afraid of the unknown, they're afraid of the future, and they're trying to play it safe all the time. And in doing so, they're compromising their truth and they're compromising, I guess, their overall direction and well-being in life because they're always playing it safe. They're never following their heart and soul that often because they've made the mistake of misidentifying security as their highest truth. They made security the highest truth, not what their heart wants, actually, because their need for safety is greater than their need to be authentic. So that's what happens at the sixth, and that's um endemic of the whole world, right? Not the whole world, but a lot of Western civilization is about security, right? We still have that survival need to be safe rather than, live with abandon, take leaps of faith and all that, which is mostly for the privileged, right? Or the awakening people, they just have to do it, right? But if you're here, this work, you can do that. So what I've identified is that the 28 at a lower level is actually type 6. And it's not this kind of reckless adventurer type. It's actually quite trapped in the need for security. And so therein lies a great journey. How does someone who's very security conscious and risk averse become willing to take risks that are for its growth and evolution, for its highest good? Do you want to say something, Morgan?
I wanted to know the profile of everyone.
Oh yeah, everyone. What do you mean profile? You mean line numbers?
Not the profile of the human design.
What
Everyone.
do you want to share yours first?
Yes, I'm a 6-2.
You're a 6-2. What kind of aura?
What do you mean?
Projector, manifestor, generator?
Generator?
You're a 6-2 generator. Okay. What are you, Moira?
I'm a 3-5 projector, splenic
3-5,
projector.
3-5 splinter
The
projector?
six, yeah, no, the six didn't come into my world. There's no such
No,
thing as safety.
there's no. Oh, you're an adventurous type, are you?
Yeah, safety never existed in my world. Yeah.
Okay, so have you always lived with that kind of risk-taking, abandon kind of, it's probably because you had that spleen, right? Because when it's defined, you're more likely, you feel more safe to take risks.
Oh, I grew up in a large family and I just couldn't. Yeah, no, that was boring.
It is boring. It is boring, right? And Luis, you
She's
want
a, she said she's a 5-1 generator.
5-1 generator? Okay, another 5-1 on a generator. Okay, beautiful. Cool. Well, just to let you know, since you brought it up, right, where it's a slight diversion, but it's perhaps a worthy one for sure. Um, I started identifying the profile lines with the types. And so we can see here there's in this individual image, there's a journey here for us, right? So I'm a 5-1, right? That's up here in the eights, right? So that tells you something, right? Because I grew up first as a 6 and then a 7. And that's quite often where a lot of people in the 20s to 30s they stop developing actually. So I could have stopped and been fixated there if I didn't awaken. So if I stopped it and remained a 7 personality, I would have never come to live my 5-1 Dharma. I would have never made it up here. So what I'm showing you here is that the journey is obvious to us now. When we know our personality type and we know our profile, we have a journey. And it doesn't mean we need to rush. It just needs to know where we're going. So if you can see, so I went from 6 to 7, naturally down to 5, where I discovered human design actually. And now I'm naturally going up to 8. So when I get up to 8 and I'm embodying the 8, that means I'll be embodying my 5-1. And that means I'll truly be transmitting all my truth, right? I'm doing that now, and that's part of my journey, but there'll be more ease here, right? There'll be less resistance to, because right now I'm afraid to be this. There's parts of me resisting my own nature because I'm afraid to be seen. Like an 8, to be a 5, to be seen on the big stage, to be a heretic, to have people judge me, to have people to be responsible, to feel responsible for the work I put out and all that, to have it be seen and all that, that's deeply scary to my nervous system. And so there's a lot of me resisting becoming a 5 or an 8 here. And
That's
so carry on.
no, I said it's very interesting.
Yeah. And so you are, what did you say, Morgan?
I say it's very interesting. So this is the profile on the top of the number we are supposed to bloom, like to become.
Yes. Yes. So you said, so you're 6'2", right? Yeah,
Number
you're 6'2". So that's up here, right?
yeah.
That's up here. And so what do you think about, do you feel higher versions of the one in you, this integrity, this activism, this wisdom, this need to be a teacher in some way? Do you feel that in you?
Yes, I do.
So you're already embodying some of the 6, right?
Mm.
Um, and the 2, if you see, the 2 is related to the 4, and this is very important, right? The connection. You can't fully embody your dharma or your purpose without also embodying the conscious and the unconscious, right? So the 1 is connected to the 4 why. The 1 is an activist. It's got a mission. It's got a voice. It's got something to say. It's got something to teach, right? But it needs to be connected deeply to what matters, to the meaning of life, right? And that's what the 4 is. The 4 represents being connected to the meaning of life, to emotions, to feelings, to humanity, to creativity, to beauty, to the things worth preserving, right? And so the 1 in its light becomes an activist for those things, but it first needs to be connected to its wild, chaotic, feminine nature of the 4, right? Because in shadow, the 1 is not, it kind of represses the wild, chaotic feminine and becomes like very orderly and rigid.
Did you create this? Like, is it something you have downloaded, or did you find this somewhere?
I created this. You're talking, this is the shadow case.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's really nice.
I'm glad you resonate. I'm glad you resonate. So yes, I've been adapting or evolving the systems to teach whatever message is coming through me. So this is not the traditional Enneagram. It's also got Marco Rodin's Abba cipher. So it's got extra lines here. You see the 1 goes to the 5, the 8 goes to the 4, the 8 and the 7, the 1 and 2 are connected. So that is representing the involutionary force, which Richard talks about. So it's not just about evolution or ascension. The original Enneagram talked about evolution or ascension, which is essentially transcending the ego entirely. Whereas Marco Rodin's Abba Cipher is about involution, it's about spirit becoming involved in matter. So it's about dissension into the body and bringing our spirit, our higher essence, our higher self into the body, into nature, into matter more. So I've combined these two because this is a tantric teaching, really. It's not about leaving the body and transcending and living in the upper chakras just, right? Yes, do that first, but come back down, come back to earth, come back to the body and contribute. Take part in this grand play that we're in, this cosmic dance of being a human, a soul in a human body. That's what I want for people, I want people to take part and to take it seriously. Yes, know your higher nature, but don't forget the human and the drama that's happening here. Take part, you know? And for the 1, it's more, that's why the 9 is at the top in the traditional Enneagram. It's about transcendence. It's about leaving the game. The nine is the one who transcends it all, accepts it all. And it's like the Buddhist monk, right? They're at the top. That's why I've created this thing, which I'll show you now since we're here. We got it here. It's not very big. Let's find a better one. Screw it. I'll just keep it there. So I don't know if you see it here, but this is the reversed version. This is dissension or involution. So where the nine is flipped and now six is at the bottom. So that's what I'm proposing. So it's not about, yes, leave, like, transcend, know that you're not this small self, connect to your higher self, to your soul, to your multidimensional nature, do the nine thing, but come back down. So this is more of the advanced teaching, which I'm giving you some insight on. It's like, come back into the body. Six, and the six is like the everyman. They're like the most likable. They're just they're kind of like the everyman archetype, the regular person. And in shadow, they represent most of society, right? The kind of everyone who's asleep. But to be a six who's awake is like an amazing thing. It's someone who's really taking part in the human drama and like contributing and creating, a lot of the sixes cities are connected to teamwork and synarchy. The 44, for example, of synarchy. And this is what a big part of this teaching as well. It's about how can we create heaven on earth and be part of this harmonious system. Yeah, so that was a long way of saying, yes, I've evolved the teaching to talk about other specific teachings like dissension and involution, which is not talked about a great deal. It's not talked about all human design. Involution is talked about a little bit in Gene Keys, but not in the way that I teach it. I'm teaching more of a tantric kind of perspective. Yeah. So that's the idea. It's kind of shamanic. So you know your types. Okay, let's go back. Where were we? Okay. The workshop was meant to be about this, but I guess it wasn't. It was just a general overview today. So, but this is great. Initiation. What want to talk about? What does it say? Purpose is your true nature, your embodied being. Your inner light manifested in the flesh. To live with purpose is to be on the path of the highest alignment that is certain. So to live in your highest alignment. So this is my definition of purpose, like the highest version of it is like you have a higher self, right? That's your future self completely and fully manifested, or it's unmanifested potential, right? It's your higher self is your highest potential. And we can live in such a way that we are energetically, spiritually, everything emotionally, mentally aligned to that higher self, so that every action that we take, every behavior, every word that we speak is in alignment to that. Of course, it won't be like that in the beginning, but that could be our intention. And so when we live in alignment to a higher self, it doesn't mean we're going to be our higher self yet, but we're on the path to becoming that self. And so everything we do is invigorated with so much aliveness and purpose because we couldn't be on a higher path because it is literally the direct path to our higher self. It's literally the direct path. And so that's why a big part of this teaching is about alignment and orientation. It's about where are we going and why. We don't even need to know the why. It's about what is the direction of our highest fulfillment. And for me, it's about facing that which is most challenging right now for you. Because what we need to move away from is what the six is up to, is living a life of pure insulated security where it creates a false sense of security, which is very easy to do in the modern world because we can get a good paying job, and we can create a family unit. We can get all our needs met. We can live near shops. We can buy stuff. So we can live a life of security. But that's a life of just like banal safety, right? And it doesn't give us much growth. Some beings, just to let you know, are not meant to awaken in this lifetime. And so they can be sixes. Great. They're meant to be sixes, right? They're meant to be asleep and not be on this awakening path. But if you're here, you're probably on an awakening path. So that's not necessary. I wouldn't hesitate to guess that it's probably not your path to play it safe, right? It's to take those continual leaps toward your evolution, because that's what the soul came here for, to evolve, to experience, to grow. And believe it or not, it wasn't here to be safe and not experience pain. Why would a soul come into a human body not to experience pain? That would be the most ridiculous move ever, right? It wouldn't make any sense. The idea is, this is from Law of One, by the way, is that Earth is the best gig in town. There is no better game in town. And if you're interested in evolution, which all souls are, I think that's what Law of One says. It's the best way to evolve is to be in a body, to forget your true nature as unconditional love, or as source, as God, and to really immerse yourself in experience. That's the best way to evolve, because Earth is fucking hard. It's challenging. And we've got lifetimes of karma as well to make up for, which makes it even harder, right? But it's in this opposition, and now we're coming into the teaching, right? 38, the fighter, is all about opposition. And this channel is all about facing opposition. And opposition is adversity, our life challenges, illnesses, work stuff, businesses, anything that's quite hard and quite generally quite stressful is opposition. It causes resistance in us. And it's in the facing of this resistance that the diamond of our true nature, right, our true self, is revealed, because it has a deconditioning effect, a very powerful and profound deconditioning effect on us when we're willingly facing our life challenges, because we're forced to let go of not self behavior that is no longer serving us. In the face of adversity, we can't hold on to that stuff. It will be forced out of us. And what we're forced to discover is our higher nature, our true self, aspects of us that might have been hidden, like our ability to speak our truth, or our ability to sing even, or to build a business, or do maths, or things that we repressed and thought we're not good at, or we don't like. Life is asking us to remember that that's actually part of who we are, and to willingly accept it back in. And this is the shamanic part. So it's about retrieving the parts of us, inner child, those parts lost to us, to trauma, or past lives, soul retrieval, that we need for our journey in order to live out our purpose, our dharma, our vocation. Because this work, the Shadow Keys really wants you to live out your purpose. It wants you to be an active agent in the world, like contributing in the way that you're designed to, like you have a way. And that doesn't mean you're gonna create a system like this by any means, but it means you're at your natural frequency and vibration. And even just being you is a service. Just being you is a service. And that's what purpose, the sphere of purpose, teaches. You don't need to do anything to give back to the world. Just be yourself. That's enough. And that is the ultimate purpose. Just be yourself. And hopefully, I find human design, gene keys, Enneagram, and this shadow keys are beautiful systems to help you be yourself, because weirdly, it's not that natural. It can be very unnatural to be yourself, and scary, you know? And there can be a lot of fear, a lot of shame around being yourself. And I know a lot about shame, but we won't go into that. Right now, we're talking about fear because we're dealing with the six. And so part of the revelation that came through to me, and I got to tell another story, Last time I talked far less, by the way. There was much more interaction, but this is what's coming through. Um, so let me tell you a story about how I discovered, well, how I initiated the journey of the shadow keys. Um, I was trying to be a successful screenwriter, in fact, and I'd been doing it for years, first as a hobby, and then I had made the mistake of believing in myself, right? That happened after my spiritual awakening. Before I never believed in myself, so it didn't really matter. I could just do it for fun. But when I started believing that I could do it, then there were stakes and it got a lot harder. And a lot my identity was at stake, really, and my sense of self-worth. And I found it very difficult. And I gave up, to be honest. As I did, that was a pattern within me. I gave up. I give up at things. I usually move on to the next shiny thing, right? And there's also light to that, which I won't get into, but shadow and light to it all. But I didn't succeed at that. And around about that time of like giving up on screenwriting, after 4 years of toil and trying, I had a conversation with an ex-girlfriend, and she told me that I was never committed. And when some words just hit you like a ton of bricks, like it was like a real revelation in the moment, like I wasn't committed. But it didn't just hit me that I wasn't committed to her, which was true. I was always half in, half out. Not intentionally. I was as committed as I could be at that time. Um, I was just not committed to anything. As in, I wouldn't even wash the dishes with commitment. I'd be always thinking about getting on to the next thing or rushing my hit. I'd be in the future. I would never be present and fully committed to the task at hand. Never with a full heart. I'd always be having FOMO, thinking about what I'm missing out on and all these shadows. And so when I saw, which I loved the word half-heartedness, still do, in my life, it was all over my life, right? And I saw that as a major impediment to my desire or need to be successful because success is a projector's design of success. They have to be successful, right? They're designed to be successful if you're a projector and whatever that means. And also, I'm a life path 8 in numerology, right? And that's also a design of success. So it's why I'm here. I'm meant to be successful. I'm meant to figure out how to do it. And it's hard. It's been hard for me with my conditioning. So I thought it would be a pretty good idea to learn how to be committed because I thought I knew commitment would be a key to success. If I could just go all in with a full heart, all full intention, and not give up and just keep going, I knew I would be successful. And so with that realization, I was like, I just need something that's worthy of commitment, right? And that's part of the teaching. That Shadow Keys commitment has become one of the pillars now, right? Being able to commit to something. And so it's only worth committing. Never commit to ideas in your head. They have to be full body commitments, your strategy, your authority, your heart, your soul. Commit with everything that you have to something. And then it's worthy of doing, right? And then you're going to succeed and you're not going to give up. So I was like, I looked into my life and what could I commit to? And at the time I said, I'm going to commit to a year to something in order to conquer this half-heartedness and to find success. And I'd given up on screenwriting for real because I'd put all I could into it, and I couldn't commit to a year because of the stage of development my projects were at. I didn't want to talk to producers. I didn't want to go networking and stuff like that. I was like, there's no way I could commit to that for a year. So I said, what else? I was like, oh, the Shadow Keys is a cool idea. I got the Shadow Keys as a download during a silent meditation retreat, by the way. And it came through silence, actually. I was on a 10-day silent meditation retreat, and in my pearl is the 24 of silence. And so, interestingly, through my pearl of silence, I received the invention of the shadow keys, which is pretty cool, I think. Anyway, I thought that's a cool idea. I could commit to that for a year, because I love the Enneagram. And I knew it was associated with the Enneagram at that stage. and I love human design and gene keys. And that would be a fun adventure, right? I'm just going to do it. And not to be successful, for me, it was important not to make it about a specific outcome. For me, I felt most integrity with the commitment by making it about resolving the shadow and embodying my authenticity, my true nature. I wanted to be a committed person, and that was enough for me. So I'm just going to do a year so I can be a committed person because I think that's going to benefit me and everyone around me if I can be committed. So that was where it came from. And so interestingly, that's the precursor. I decided to symbolically commit to being committed. Let me show you this. Symbolically commit to being committed. On the transit of the 29. So if you don't know this is the Rave I Ching. Every 6 days or so, we go into a different gate of the 64. It's like a calendar. And so around sometime in August, the 29 of commitment came through. And I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to the Shadow Keys for a year on the 29th. And I'm going to do 3 posts a week. That's my commitment. For a year, I'm going to do 3 posts a week. Right? That's a big commitment. But, I checked in. It was authentic. It felt achievable. Perhaps it wasn't, but I was bold and I went for it, right? But what was interesting is around about the same time, completely unrelated, I committed to go on this 6 week journey called the Rites of Passage. It's a journey of dance and movement. And I was doing that for 6 weeks at the exact same time, dancing every Tuesday for 6 weeks. And I danced every week, almost every week anyway, and it was great. I always felt free. It was easy. But these 6 weeks, or at least 4 or 5 of the 6 weeks, were incredibly challenging. Every time I showed up for the dance, I was exhausted, I was heavy, and it was very difficult to dance, but it was important I did because it was like I was dense. I was like moving through soup, and I just did the best I can and moved a lot of energy and cleared a lot of stuff. I didn't really know what was going on. I just thought I'm going through a rough cosmic patch. Or maybe everyone's going through it, but they weren't. It was just me. And what was interesting on the 6th week, the day the rites of passage was due to finish, the last session, uh I was keeping up my 3 posts a week. I was well into it. And I'm still intending to do a full year at this stage. But I was writing about the 46. And I was like, the 46 is the harmonic gate of the 29. And I'd already contemplated a lot about that. That's about moving through density, moving through heaviness and seriousness and becoming light. And I realized that's what I'd been doing for 6 weeks. I'd been moving through heaviness and serious, the burden of commitment. There was such heaviness attached to commitment that I was shedding. And it wasn't just a mental patterning from my childhood, although that's certainly there. It was far, far deeper. It was karmic. It was past life. It was from the causal body, from like, we're not just, when we're doing this work, it's not just on this plane. We're not just resolving childhood trauma necessarily, although that's important and that's a gateway to resolving anything anyway. So that can always be our outlook that we're healing our inner child. But the deeper esoteric thing is we're also clearing past life. And so the reason I couldn't be committed wasn't just from this lifetime. There was lifetimes of karma and conditioning and patterning that I had to clear in order to be a committed person. And I was dancing it out. And so the 29 is in the sacral, and that's a power center which is not defined in me. And so not only was the discipline of the type 1 personality helping me doing 3 posts a week, regimented, committing to that. It was hard, but I was doing that. But the dancing was helping me because it was activating my sacral. through movement, and I was empowering myself, and I was clearing that chakra of karma, of past life stuff, and all sorts of energy that was not conducive to commitment. So that was the revelation that came through me at the 6 weeks. And what was cool was in that last dance, I cleared it all. And I was totally liberated and so light and so free and so committed. And, so I was not just experiencing the light of, commitment or even devotion of the 29. I was also experiencing the light of the gifts of the 46, of delight, that of not, I didn't get up to ecstasy, but of delight. So I resolved two in one through this journey. And what was cool was it didn't take a year for me to become committed. It took 6 weeks. That was what the revelation was. I was like, wow, it doesn't take that long. It just needs to be very intentional and very aligned, what you're doing. So the reason it took 6 weeks is because I used a portal. I went through the 29, which is in the sacral, right? And this goes to Hermeticism, right? So above, so below, so above, as within, so without, so without, so within. The outside is the inside is the outside. That's what that really means. And so when I was doing this journey of commitment, I was actually moving along this channel energetically, inside, but also outside through my actions. The actions I was taking in the real world were clearing this channel and also reconditioning this channel to be wise in it. I was learning the wisdom of this channel through my actions. So that's the promise to you, is that through this work, and you're already doing this unconsciously, just to let you know, you have more definition in your chart than you realize. You get that definition at your birth, but we're students of life. We're souls here to learn, and we're learning all the time. And so that chart is getting defined as we learn in life, as we learn the lessons of the gates, of the centers, of the channels. We're defining them. Certain ones will be more defined where we're hanging, especially is where we're gonna end up defining the opposite gate and defining that channel probably. Um, and where we experience, this is why conflict and challenge is so important, because where we're experiencing most conflict and challenge in our life is where we're going to learn the most and become most wise and most mastered in. So if, for example, you have the 59 to the 6, which is about intimacy, connection, uh, that it's about intimacy and connection and conflict, right? If you got the 59 to the 6, or even if you don't have the 59 to the 6, right? But if you're experiencing a lot of those themes in your life because you were drawn to it for whatever reason, so you're having a lot of conflict, you've got great desire for intimacy, you're going to condition and learn and become wise in this channel if you really commit to that. And so this is what the shadow keys is as well. It's not about your definition, it's about where you're undefined. It's about what's unconscious within you, which is your potential. It's your innate potential. So it's not just who you're designed to be as a human, it's about who you're becoming in this lifetime and the lessons you're here to learn. There we go. So, any questions on that? No? No questions. Talkie, talkie, talkie. I'm not going to be able to talk for a week after this. All right. So we're here for the 28 or the 38. Who's got the 28 or the 38? Luis? Morgan, do you have it? 28 or the 38? No? Moira? She might not be here. Anyway, we'll
I
see.
have 13. 13?
You have 38?
No, no, 13, 1, 3.
Oh, 1-3. Okay, we're not talking about that one right now.
28. Okay, sorry.
28 or 38, right? So I've called this the pathway of purpose, right? For me, it's about the best pathway to become really embodied in your purpose. And I am talking about unconscious earth here. So, and in the last session, which was really great, we had a couple of the women actually, they had the 28 in their unconscious earth. Two of them did. And so that was really powerful. So it's going to be, it's about really coming embodied. And I'm going to tell you a story now about one of them who showed up. She showed up, she tuned in at the hospital, right? And interestingly, two of my clients in the Shadow Keys, both of them came to me and wanted to talk about this channel, the 28 to the 38, which I thought was an interesting occurrence. But it turns out it's just very important to the transmission. And that's how life, when you're living in purpose and in alignment, life really supports you and brings you the people and the circumstances and the synchronicities that you need to keep going on your path. And so it brought me these women who were interested in the 28 to the 38, and they wanted healing here. They wanted to, yeah, deal with meaninglessness, purposelessness, like not caring, right? This deep feeling of like, what's the point, right? And I can relate to that, but to a far lesser degree, right? They had it at a very existential level. I had it at a more kind of apathy, like more of a type 7 indifference apathy kind of level. And this channel is the best one for caring about stuff, right? It will show you what's worth living for. And it can be quite dangerous in that way, right? And I don't want to mean that in a scary way, but the 28 is core fears about death and danger, right? It's a survival, a core tribal wound of fearing death. And so you might be confronted with that. And she won't mind me telling because she's an advocate and a great voice for the Shadow Keys now. She's said many things. I wish I recorded what she said so I don't have to reiterate it to a far lesser degree. But what she said was that, you know, she came in to me to know why she was purposeless, right? But she had this, what the session ended up being about was the pain that she had in her lower back. And at that time, it was benign. It was fairly benign, but it was a pain that she dealt with for a while. And so, you know, with the shamanic method and the Shadow Keys method, it's pain is the way. Actually, what's causing us the most trouble in our life needs to be addressed. It shouldn't be avoided. And so the type 6 and the 28 in shadow will avoid things to the best of their ability. So it's about what are we avoiding most that's actually calling for our attention, because pain is a message, conflict is a message, challenge is a message, right? And we're being asked to listen, not to bury our head in the sand. We got to listen to the pain, especially if it's in our body, right? That's the body's last port of call to say, wake up, pay attention. And so we looked at it, and there was a lot of trauma and resistance and all sorts of that in her wound, which unbeknownst to me, it ended up initiating her onto a journey of the pain getting far worse, not better. Actually, it got worse when she went into it, right? There was obviously a lot in there, probably lifetimes of stuff that wanted to be addressed. And it just kept on developing. And eventually, recently, she had a diagnosis of cancer. So it turned out to be cancerous and life-threatening. And so she's had to literally contend with facing death. And what was so beautiful and brave of her, and we've been in communication over voice notes, and so, but she shared her story to the women earlier today and told us how she's come into total acceptance of it, and she's never felt more alive in her life, more on purpose, right? Because what this facing death has done is made life more meaningful. Like, there's nothing more important than dealing with that life challenge in front of her. And it's made her viscerally scared. There was a lot of pain and torment involved in it, right? But through that darkness, through that pain, she's at a very beautiful state. She was positively glowing as she tuned in at 4 a.m. at the hospital to talk to us, you know? And she had no resistance to this really a horrible diagnosis, right? She was not resentful. She was not in victim consciousness. She was, and this is another thing about the six, right? It's about transcending, this journey is about transcending victim, right? We're not a victim of our life circumstances. They're actually in their highest light for us, but we have to be able to accept them as gifts, as catalysts for our growth. They're here to help shape us and redirect us to who we're meant to be, where we're going. And so she's fully accepted and surrendered to this cancer diagnosis and the possibility of death and is in trust and she's alive and she's not scared. And it's amazing to see. And it hurts me to feel that, it might, who knows how it's going to go, but I have faith that she's doing what's right for her. And she's alive and she's happy, right? She's doing what she knows she needs to do. And she's feeling the purity of who she is and connecting. I don't want to say anymore, but that's what this is about. What happens when we face these adversities is they have the habit of refining us, chipping away at all that's not us, and really connecting to the purity, that essence of who we are, and coming alive to that, awake to that. So that was just a story. The other client had a completely different story. But yeah, just to say that this channel can be intense if you're working with it, but it's never wrong. It's never a mistake. It's part of your path, and that's what the victim consciousness is. Really, it's the belief in mistakes that this shouldn't be happening to me. It's kind of a rejection of reality. Is like, this is wrong. This is not meant to be like this, right? Rather than a total acceptance of it and therefore the empowerment of it. And what happens when you totally accept something is that you can use it. And I use this word a lot, catalyst. This is another law of one term. So it's about using our experiences to help us understand ourselves, to help us grow, to help us let go, and to help us become more wise. Because it's not really about the outer world as a soul, as spirit, right? It's not about the outer world. The outer world in the Hindu tradition is the Maya, it's the illusion. It's really about what's going on in our inner world. And so all this outer world stuff is really helping us pinpoint what's going on inside and focusing. And that's why I was kind of I'm just now seeing it's somewhat worthy of admiration. The fact that I focused on not the outward manifestation of what would happen, the success that may or may not happen, it didn't happen, of committing to a year of shadow keys, right? But more on the gift of commitment, right? Because it's my belief that I think it's in human design as well, that the higher self essentially programs us, right? Using the personality crystal to learn certain lessons and to live a certain life. And so, really, what's most important to the soul is the lessons, right? Yes, it's gained through experiencing and being immersed in life, but it's about the gold and the gifts we receive, the connection, the truth we receive, the love we open to, the wisdom, all that stuff is the real gold. And that comes through adversity quite often. So that's what's offered in this channel. And that sounds quite intimidating, but it's really not, because if you're aligned to it, right, you can feel in your body that it's a yes. And so what the 28 and any gate in the spleen ask you to do is to trust. So Moira may know this most because she's got a defined spleen, but we all need to learn this. We need to learn how to become deeply trusting of ourselves first and foremost, and then of life, or the other way around, of life and then ourselves. But I think it's safer to become trusting of yourself. But also, you can do it at the same time, right? Grow in our trust, because we cannot become embodied beings and live in purpose if we can't trust ourselves and if we can't trust life, because we're still going to be afraid. We're going to still be in fear consciousness. Ah, breath for me. And you if you want. So, any questions on that? Any thoughts? So let's go back here. There's some comments. Is there any questions in the comments? Did anyone see? Is that a question? I'll just finish up on that. Does anyone feel called in this moment to be a test subject of sorts for the others and for themselves to um, address a shadow, something that they feel called to in this moment? So there's no obligation here at all. But there's something that you would like to talk about and bring to the group and to learn the Shadow Keys method uh, experientially now. Does anyone want to do that?
I would love to be in presence when that happens, but I am having to leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, no problem, Moira.
we,
Thank you for your
we,
presence.
can we do this another time? Because I'm just loving being
Well,
here with this group.
well, I loved having you here, Moira, and I'd love to see you again. And the good news is I'm going to be doing more of this. So you should write this in your diary. I'm going to do another one, free one, on the 27th of November, right? One more free one. And then I'm also going to invite, and I'm inviting you now to go on a weekly calls with me. I've got three planned, but I may just continue them every week. But I'm gonna obviously ask for a contribution, some money for that one in order to sustain the shadow keys. But yeah, the idea is to have weekly calls, weekly drop-ins, and to start disseminating the teachings orally here, but also with the recordings, to help it get, as I say, it's all living in me. And I personally way prefer talking to you guys about it than sitting in my bedroom all day just thinking about it and writing, you know. It's far more laborious. I'm a social person. I'm still a seven at heart. And I like being involved with you guys and hearing your questions and also to have your influence on me because this is a vast system that is coming through. That's going to take a lifetime to really come through. It could even take longer, right? But I want what you guys, the community, to direct us towards what humanity is calling for, right? Because we're all reflections of what humanity is calling for. Hopefully, we get a reflector who's really reflective of what humanity is asking for. But the idea is that I want you guys to inform me about where to go because I don't know if you've noticed that the Shadow Keys is pretty deep already. There's already a lot of information, probably too much. So I need to refine that and choose a place to really start, a beginning place, you know? The analogy I'm using right now for where the Shadow Keys is that I'm building a computer, but I'm currently working on the microchip. That's why it looks so complex. But eventually I'm going to have hopefully a beautiful Apple interface that's actually very easy to work with and interpret and use practically. You know, I still want it to be very practical. So that's where I'm at, and I'd love for you to be involved, Moira, at the level that feels good for you. So 27th for the first one, and then every week thereafter, I'm going to be doing paid calls as part of my first group container course. So we're going to do more of a container kind of experience where, you know, I don't know if you've been in containers before, but already I'm seeing I've had two calls today of three people, and there's beautiful synchronicities that happen where the people show up, have medicine for everyone else to offer as well. And it happens in the Gene Keys containers too. But this is going to be very different. There's going to be actually live healing. Last session we did a healing, we did, and we'll do one now, where we actually clear one of the channels energetically first And then from that clearing, we receive insight or inspiration about some clear action steps we can take to, now that we've cleared it inside partially, we need to go and clear it totally by taking action in the world, right? And so this is really a movement from contemplation to action through embodiment, right? So it's one thing having a revelation that you understand your trauma and why you can't speak your truth, but it's another thing actually being in the world and speaking your truth, right? There's so much more resistance to being in the world, being around friends, family, your boss, and the visceral experience of fear and or shame that arises in the body that prevents you from speaking your truth, right? So I want to get people to actually do the things in the world and to have a support system to help them do the things in the world. And so all the action that comes forth from this work is never from the mind. And Ra taught this. It's never egoic ideas because the ego's always trying to compensate for its limiting beliefs. So if it believes it's not enough, it's going to try and do things to prove that's enough. I know that one. So when I was making ambitious goals for the shadow, not the shadow keys, but for my writing, I would make them too ambitious because I was trying to prove something, right? Because I felt unworthy and I needed validation, rather than really listening to my instincts, my intuition about where was that an exact right action I need to take now, right? There's an exact action that you can take when you listen to your intuition or whatever your authority is that is divinely aligned. And it doesn't come from ego. And so that means you can trust it. So I want to help people do that, take action. Richard's got us pausing. I've got us taking action.
Yes, I'm an active participator in life.
Yeah, great. I love that,
Thank,
Moira. Thank you for coming,
yeah,
and we'll speak soon.
yeah. Thanks. Good night, guys.
All the best. All the best. So that leaves two. And so, again, the invitation is to feel into your body. Is there any of you who feel like they want to participate in this and share something that's in their heart that they want addressed?
Louise has shared something on the group.
Oh, as a Scorpion with the Sun 20, I know about fear, survival, and facing fear, but I cannot talk here, so it's hard to use me. We can't really. Is there anywhere you can talk, Louise? No? You're stuck?
So what do we have to share exactly? Like something like
So,
this.
so for example, if we're in the 28, we're also moving into the 44. We could use a shadow. If you're experiencing the shadow of purposelessness, we could look at that. Um, we had in the last session, the girl was experiencing powerlessness. So she had the 28 in her. So let's go. I'll share the screen quickly just to share what I'm talking about. So she had the 28 in her unconscious earth, and the 38 she didn't have, right? But and that's a type 8. And so she was experiencing the shadows of not being able to speak her truth, feeling powerlessness, feeling controlled. She was experiencing the shadows of the 38, which is what the shadow keys teaches as well. It's not just because we got the 28 defined, we also experience the shadows of the harmonic on the opposite side quite often, right? And so she was experiencing more of this repression and but she also knew within her heart and her soul about where she is in her journey that she actually needs to lean more forward into the type 8, the leader energy, the assertive energy. And so that's what we worked on. We worked on where that blockage was, which for her it was in the throat. And so we energetically cleared it here. And then we tuned into her intuition and she gave 3 action steps that she could take to permanently clear that for the 11 weeks. So she was actually initiated herself, committed to this 11-week journey. So she had three clearly defined steps that she could do for 11 weeks that I promised her that would transform this energy.
Okay,
How
so
confident I am in the work.
I might have an idea of something.
Yeah.
Uh,
I just want to check in with Louise. We can do both, by the way. Do you have one as well? Can you speak?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if I'm speaking now. Can you hear the restaurant people too?
You're heard, and we can do that with you, but we can do both.
Okay.
You both want to see how this works?
Yeah, I'm cool.
Okay. Morgan, do you want to go first then and lead the way?
yeah, okay. Um, so I don't know exactly what's the shadow, but it's like,
Well, first of all, let's drop in together. This is a embodied experience. So take a breath, drop into the body. So you've already tapped into the energy of what you want to talk about. Can you feel it in your body?
okay. So I think for me, it's my boundaries. They have not been heard. Every time I share them, like it's like there is no respect about my boundaries, and then I kind of lay back and just accept and just find a way to just accept what it is.
And where do you feel that in your body, by the way? So we always got to come back to the body because the body is your messenger, your truth. So
Mm.
I want that to be our guide, right? So when you tap into this feeling, this pain, this wound that you're experiencing, or conflict, where do you feel it in your body?
Right now, I feel it in my belly.
So your belly. So that shows it. Is that the sacral? Whereabouts? The solar? Whereabouts?
Yeah, like in the middle, like in the no, no, the you know where we could the
Oh, the umbilical cord, the belly button. So it's around the sacral, right?
it's like around it, yeah, all
Right. So
around.
that's the sacral center. It's the sexual energy center. It's where a lot of conflict is, right? It's also where the 59 is, which connects to the 6, which is conflict. So I don't know if it's related to that. Probably not. You said boundaries, right? So boundaries is a key word. Boundaries being violated or crossed, right?
Yes.
Right. So first of all, we just want to bring loving awareness to the fact that this is a trauma and it's been triggered in your body, right? You're feeling that wound now. It's there. So if you close your eyes and just join me in this little journey, and I just want to make sure that you consent to feeling this here live in front of everyone. Are you okay with that? It
Yeah.
might bring up emotion, probably, because this is what that is. It's emotion.
Okay.
Okay, beautiful. So just close your eyes, take a breath, and just feel into the belly. And I'm just your guide. You don't have to go through with anything that you feel uncomfortable with. I respect your boundaries. So just let me know if you don't want to go ahead. But the invitation here now is to feel the sensations in the belly and to acknowledge them, not to judge them or wish them away, but to feel them. And what do you feel there?
I feel like I'm not being heard.
You feel that. So that's the wound, right? And it could be the belief, right? So maybe put your hand there and connect to it with empathy. This is part of you that believes this, right? You're not being heard, right? And so this is the healing aspect of the work, the acceptance piece. You know, we have awareness, which you've brought awareness to. And before we take action, this is kind of an action, but we're not doing external action. We're bringing loving awareness to it, which is acceptance. So just recognize this feeling that you have, this belief, I'm not being heard. And the invitation is to maybe repeat it a few times and to fully feel and give yourself permission to feel the emotion that's here, to allow it, and just to stop resisting this feeling. Yeah.
Yes, that is like I don't feel accepted for who I am. Like kind of not showing my authentic self because I feel like it's not appreciated. So I kind of, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm. Yeah, not feeling accepted. Great. And do you feel you can identify what Enneagram type this is related to? Because that will help with your awareness, you know? No?
It'll be the same one as the one I identify myself, like the two.
Yeah. Do you have any keys in your chart? Do you have your human design chart to hand?
Yes.
What gates do you have defined in that sacral area?
Um, I've got, you mean the activated one is
Yeah.
29, 42, and 59.
Oh, so we got 59. Okay, it's 59.
Yeah.
Okay. So 59 to 6, right? This is a very powerful one as well, right? So you might be experiencing the shadow of the 6, which is probably, and which is conflict and conflict avoidance, right? Would you say you're conflict avoidant?
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've identified the problem, right? So that's what, so the awareness is bringing us in, and we can look at the gates where we're feeling. You know, usually you kind of know, you knew it's boundaries, right? So boundaries is always to do with relationships. And the 59 to the 6 is all about conflict and relationships. It's about connection, intimacy, relationship. So that was my initial instinct, if you remember. And so it's perfect, right? So you're experiencing the shadow of the 6, which I say is avoidance, right? And the 9 is very conflict avoidance, and it's a very real thing. I know as a 9, conflict, we're so averse to it. You know, the 28 is risk averse, the 9 or the 6 is risk averse, but the 9 is conflict averse. It's avoiding at all costs. Why? Because it's deeply terrifying to them at a cellular level. It feels like death, or you know something like death. That's what it feels like. So they're trying to avoid it at all costs. And the nines can build their whole lives around avoiding conflict. And in this avoidance, they're avoiding who they really are because they're never penetrating to the core of their nature. They're building lives of easygoing flow, letting other people decide what to do. They're not having impact or will on the world, you know? But what if you're a very strong, independent, assertive woman in your core, right? That and a 9, a shadow 9, sorry, not a healthy 9, but a shadow 9 cannot exist together, right? That wound, that conditioning needs to be addressed. And so that may be or is likely what's happening here. So you're avoiding conflict and having your boundaries crossed. And something else about the 9, which is probably relevant here,
When you
is
said nine, is it 9 enneagram or 9
Enneagram, Enneagram 9, right? So the conflict avoidant, they're also anger avoidant. They're very repressed in anger. Do you get angry?
Not in front of the people, but inside myself, I can feel it. And usually I need to talk to people to share the experience I had, like to let go the anger, but just in discussion, like in conversation.
Yeah, that's relatively healthy, right? You're not, I was totally detached from my anger. Like I didn't even know I had anger. I never got angry, but I was just completely emotionally detached from it because I had very much shamed it, right? And it's probably what's happening here. There's still some shame around it. Somehow anger, and it's a societal thing, not just a you thing or a me thing, that anger is not okay. Anger is wrong, bad, shameful, scary. You know, I had so much aversion to anger because of my father that it wasn't okay. And what do I do when I make anger not okay? I neglect my own truth, my right to be angry. I'm a pushover, I'm a people pleaser, and I don't stand up for myself or other people. All these things when I make anger not okay, right? And so that may be the invitation, but we're going to let your body feel it. So can you feel into that thing again in your belly and feel what emotion it is you're feeling there? What's the emotion you're feeling?
Not sure.
Can you feel something? So just pay attention to the awareness, just be the witness.
Is it the emotion about like this repressed anger or
I'm saying you observe what's there and then see if you can tune in. And it may be anger, but it may be something else. So let's not assume anything. We want to be the witness, just a curious observer of what's there. Like intrigued, non-judgmental, no assumptions. We're just bringing the light of our awareness into that area. And we're observing, first of all, the sensations. What does it feel like? The movement, maybe it's churning, maybe it's tingling, maybe it's pressure, maybe it's pain. We're observing the sensations. And then we are seeing if we can penetrate a little bit deeper and bring our wisdom, our knowledge to the case. Like, what emotion is this? Can I tune into the frequency? I know it took me a while to notice anger because I didn't even know what it looked like. So maybe you can run through your head. Is it this emotion or is it that emotion or
I cannot pick up the emotion. I just feel that it's heavy and now I have pain in my back. Mm.
so you can see it's connected to other wounds and other imprints, right? And that's why it's a bit of a journey. So we'll keep going. So feel into the belly and what wants to be said here. So I liked what you were saying before. Maybe you can keep speaking that truth that wants to be said. And maybe you can talk from first person.
I don't know why I don't connect with the emotion.
That's okay. But you were saying something around not being heard. Maybe you can say that I'm not heard. Say
I'm
that
not,
a few times.
I'm not heard. I'm not heard. Sadness. I feel sad.
Sadness. There we go. We found it. And that's just a tip for everyone listening that you can speak the words, the truth. And then often that's the catalyst to bringing up the emotion because you're connecting to that inner child, that part of you that wasn't heard, you know? So this is lovely work. So you feel sad. Yeah. And so just to acknowledge and recognize that sadness and make it okay. And it's okay to be sad. And you've got a right to be sad, right? You know, so just acknowledging that part of you, connecting to that. And here we're bringing in the love of the mother, which I talk about. I've not talked about it yet so much, but in my work, there's two types of love that we work with, right? And when we're working with the inner child and trauma and feelings, we want to work with the unconditional love of the mother, that nurturing energy, total acceptance. That's the energy we want to bring in. When we're working with like my undisciplined little boy who trying to be committed or consistent, we're working with the father. The father is like, is not interested in how you're feeling now. It's interested in your commitments and honoring yourself, respecting yourself, and honoring your future self, who you're becoming. So it's a different, that's a masculine energy, right? It's still love, but it's a completely different vibration. It's saying, no, don't stop now to have and miss your deadline. You committed to the deadline. Just because you're tired, push on through, honor the commitment. You know, it's kind of telling you to man up. And we need the mother and the father in our lives and our inner lives. That's part of reparenting ourselves, right? To compensate for the masculinity or the femininity that we didn't receive in a healthy balance in our childhood, right? We need both, right? I needed mostly masculinity to compensate, right? I had a lot of healthy and unhealthy femininity, but a lot of healthy, caretaking, loving, compassionate, giving nature from my mother that got instilled in me. But I didn't have the healthy equivalent of the masculine. So for me, integrating my father, a healthy divine father, and being that voice and knowing the things to do and say to keep me, my little boy, on track and to discipline my personality so that it's actually representative of my healthy masculine, not of my wounded child. Yeah.
I relate to you about this because my mother was a 2 and my father a 8 as well.
Oh, really? Well, there you go. Yeah. And okay. How is your masculinity?
Now I don't know how, like, but definitely, like, I cannot cope with anger. Like, it's something that I always push away
Okay. So
from others. And then about me, it's mostly or I repress it or I just talk about it.
Mhm. So where's anger located in your body, do you think? And you can look at your human design chart if you want.
In my in here.
Yeah, that's the truth, but also it's in the sacral, right? That's your sexual energy center, your creative energy center, your power center, right? Quite often, I know from my own experience with repressed anger, that's where anger gets repressed and it blocks us creatively and stops us from having real impact in the world. And, and we can be blocked in our throat speaking our truth, which is also our manifestation center. So we're not creatively driven, powerful energetically from a sacral level, and we're not able to assert our truth and speak our truth into the world, we're going to have a hard time in the masculine world. We are. We're not going to, it's going to be hard to manifest unless we're like pure divine feminine receiving it. But we're going to have a hard time doing the work in the world and making real impact that way. So, that's just from that side. Okay. So we looked at your divine feminine. We brought some nurturing, loving energy. Can we just check in with that part of you, that sad inner child, and see how they are and if they've got any needs that they need addressed first? Just check in with them. It's allowing the sadness, allowing the child to be as they are, to let them know if there's anything you can do to resolve this boundary issue and to help you on your path.
Being honest.
Being honest, that's a great first step, right? Honest. So keep tuning in. Is there any more?
And accepting whatever comes to me, as like trust the process, like whatever, like what is the result of me sharing my truth.
Accept it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that. Beautiful. That's two. Any more? I've got a question for you. Have you got any unresolved conflicts or anger toward or resentment toward people? Basically, truths that you've not shared yet with your relationships.
Like, I think I didn't understand. Like,
So, looking at your relationships, do you have any unresolved conflicts, truths that you haven't shared, anger you haven't expressed with your relationships that you can think of?
no, I don't think so.
Okay, beautiful. So I'm going to repeat that back to you. And the invitation now is like your inner child has told you, given you the medicine. You've already helped yourself a great deal by bringing that love and awareness to the wounding. But that inner child has given you medicine, and we're going to refine it. And I'm going to introduce this acronym. It's a working title, but in order to bring this awareness into action to help us with embodying and really instilling this change at a cellular level for you, right? Because it's great that you're aware of it now. People go to psychology for 10 years and they're aware of all their shit, but it doesn't make a goddamn bit of difference sometimes if they're not really changing and if they're not becoming a different person. And so taking new action steps that are out of character for your current self, but in line with your true self is the way forward. And that creates new neural pathways, new connections, and expands you into other dimensions of who you are, right? So you said being honest, speaking your truth. And then you also said uh,
Accept.
accepting everything that comes after speaking your truth, like seeing that as part of it, right? And I love both that works really well together, right? Because often that's quite often that's the fear of the nine. It's not just the speaking your truth and the conflict that it's also what happens after, like the impact that's going to have, how people feel about them, like more conflicts or judgments that might happen from speaking your truth and causing conflict. So if you tune in, right, and this needs to be again an embodied experience, we're doing this. ACT is the acronym. So there's aligned action steps as A. There's C is clarity and clarity. It's about getting clarity on what those steps are. The specifics are very important when creating action steps because where we're not specific, there's uncertainty, and the ego loves getting out of commitments through uncertainty. You need to commit to certain clear goals. And the last one's T, timing. So what is the time frame you're going to commit to this, right? And so that's the invitation. So if you're committed to working through this uh, trauma, the shadow of being conflict avoidant and having your boundaries crossed, right? You're going to hit two birds with one stone here. That's the promise here. But you have to listen to your body about and your higher self about what aligned action that's going to bring that about and for how long. So,
I, yeah. I think what I'm scared in the conflict is what I feel. I feel a lot of stress, and I don't handle very well stress. Um, it's something that make me really all over the place. Like, yeah. But yeah, like in terms of timing and actions, I mean, I'm really ready to change and then to work very like a lot on myself. I've been doing this already like for a while now. But as a time frame, I would say in January, something will change. And I'm sure 100% I can feel it inside of me. So January will be the turning point for me.
Interesting. January. And is there a specific date that you're going to commit to? Because it's important that you commit to a date.
Um, I'm going to Peru to do like ceremonies with a shaman, with a
Yeah.
shaman,
Hmm.
and it will definitely be part of my intention during those ceremonies. So I'm hoping once I get out of the ceremonies, I as well I want to
Yeah.
speak my truth. Like
And what date do you leave
I live around the 11th.
of January?
Yes.
Okay. Can you commit to whatever action you decide here till the 11th of January?
You mean to start now?
Yeah. You can choose not to do this now and do it later, but what's the truth? Do you want to do this initiation? This is initiation. This is what I do. It's like a self-initiation. So the universe and your life becomes your initiation grounds where you grow. So you commit to a specific time frame, say 11th of January, which is what, 11 weeks or something, 11, 12 weeks, right? So almost 3 months, which is a great amount of time. That's a solid amount of time. And then you commit to the specific goals, the clarity, and the aligned action steps to do certain things for that 3 months. And it might be something you do once a week or every day, or every time a conflict arises, you're going to do these things, right? And you're just going to follow through with it or to the best of your ability. It's okay if you fail because there's no such thing as failure in this. It's all part of the process because the whole thing, the only failure is if you don't commit for the 3 months or the duration. The point is that you just got to stick to the commitment and you're going to learn it and grow and transform along that way. So that's the invitation here.
Okay, so do I have to find now something or like do
Yeah,
you
the idea is that I'm going to hold you accountable now. You got an accountability witness, so you're going to listen to your own instincts. I'm not going to impose anything on you. It's all going to come from your higher self, right? Your body, not from your ego. It's going to listen to your body. What are the 3 things that I can do to transform this shadow? And we know it's speaking your truth, but what does that look like? What's the clarity on that? That's the aligned action. Okay. Being honest, speaking my truth, what does that look like?
can I do tapping to help me
You can
with
do whatever you like. All processes are working. This is a holistic practice.
um maybe to notice and maybe write notes where I try to avoid to be honest.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Can I get permission to see what I see just to help you get clarity, all right? So you've touched on what's needed there, right? So you're going to pay attention to all the opportunities to be honest. And you're going to do your very best to be honest in every situation. But if you're not honest, you're going to notice and then you're going to reflect on that. That's an action step, right? I'm going to journal and reflect on every instances of not being honest or even conflict I would add in there, right? So I'm going to see that conflict and the shadow, which is the 59 of dishonesty. Did you know that? 59 is dishonesty. See, it's all aligned. Your body's telling you, and it's in your design. So the invitation is to be honest, right? And to use all these conflicts, all these relational frictions that you have where you're afraid to be honest, right? It feels scary to do it. And like, I don't want to hurt this person's feelings, or I don't want to lose them as a friend, or whatever it is. And it's okay if you don't speak your truth, but you're going to try to the best of your ability. And you're going to, or you can say, no, I don't want to do that. That's also fine. But I'm going to reflect but at least you're choosing it then, right? You're just saying, no, I'm not doing it this time because of whatever reason, right? You don't need to force yourself to do anything. You're discerning, you're choosing. But what you're doing is committing to reflecting on it and working on it and trying your best to be honest where possible.
Okay. So the journal and the tapping, I think, are the two that
Come through. That's great. So there's journal, there's tapping, there's treating every conflict as an opportunity to transcend the shadow. Just know that every single conflict that arises, whether it's with a boyfriend, a parent, a shopkeeper, someone who spills a drink on you, it doesn't matter, right? There's an opportunity there for you to speak your truth. Life is going to, and this is what initiation is. So if you commit, which I hope you will, to the 11 weeks or whatever till the 11th, life is going to give you full of material for you to transcend the shadow. You'll see. It's like a game. It's going to give you as a, here's my opportunity. Am I going to step up and do it? So life is going to play with you. It's your friend. It's not there for someone to shout at you. Someone may shout at you, but that's only to arouse your spirit, your true nature, which is unafraid to stand strong in the face of conflict and adversity, right? Probably. I know when I was doing this work, I had a guy shout at me and it shook me to my core, right? But I didn't play victim and I didn't blame him much. I owned it and used that as a portal to transcend my fear and like I got angry because angry empowered me and like gave my cells strength. So I was stronger in the areas that I was weak. But I cried. I felt the pain at a deep level first. So I used the wounding that it triggered to work on myself and to make myself stronger in those weak areas.
I was about to say something. Yeah. The reason why sometimes I'm not being honest is because I feel like I can sense or feel the wound of people, or and because of this, I feel like I can take it differently. Sometimes I'm just thinking, oh yeah, but maybe she has this, she doesn't. I don't know how to express this, but sometimes I feel like I can feel other people too much.
Mm-hmm.
That's a part of me.
It's the empathy. You got 13.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, yeah, I think I do. Yeah.
Yeah. You told me you do.
Actually, no, I don't have 13. I have 33, 81, 31, 7.
Okay. Beautiful. But anyway, you're an empath essentially. You're feeling their energy.
Yeah, I do. And because of this, I feel like maybe I can take it, and I don't know why. It's like I just I feel like I can take the pain more than others. I don't know why I feel this.
That's the classic caretaker or savior syndrome. I know that. Right? That's another wound entirely, right? But what's important here is that, we don't want to overwhelm you with taking too much shadow on. You can take on extra and address that if you want, but that's a different initiation, really. What we want to focus on is honesty.
Yes.
And that means connection to what is honest and true within you, and then being able to share that if appropriate, or at least connect to that truth for you and journal about it. So I think that is enough action, but also avoidance would be an important thing because you could say that avoidance is not honest. Because if it's your truth to speak someone and you avoid speaking to them, that's not truthful. Or if it's your truth to go to a party, but you don't like the person there, that's avoiding. If you're afraid of conflict with a person who's going, you're avoiding it. So it's noticing the avoidance pattern and not being afraid of conflict and entering into that, right? That's how you really work on the sixth and the type 9 personality, is like really entering into consciously into the conflict and knowing that, yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. Any conflict is, but you need to learn at your physical level how to feel safe in conflict because it's actually not that bad. Fact, it's great. There's no more transformative energy in the world than conflict. It's creative energy. And so we need to be able to work with it, hang with the tension, hang with the friction, and just find safety within it. And the type 9 is something I talk about, does well. It's not fun through exposure therapy. Exposure therapy, that idea of like, you know, gradually getting used to colder water or gradually getting used to heat or whatever. But in the case of the 9, it's about exposing yourself to conflict and anger and friction and tension and just not running away from it.
In my life.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
running away from it, just saying, okay, I'm not going to avoid and run away from this pain. I'm going to go into it because that's where my empowerment lies. It's never going to be found running away from that. It's actually going into it.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the invitation. So the question is, can you commit to all these things discussed for 11 weeks or until the 11th?
Yes, I can. Yes, of course.
That feels good? Feel it in
Yeah,
your body?
yeah,
Yeah.
good.
So that feels like you want a full body fuck yes to this kind of thing, Just like, yes, the body wants that. The soul wants it, right? This leads to soul growth or soul remembering, you know? So that's fantastic. So you've made your first commitment, and what you begin as of today is an initiation, right? So you've got 3 months. I don't know how long that one typically is, but it doesn't matter so much. That's a genuine commitment, 3 months. But as I said, the harmonic gates around the I Ching are all different. Some are 11 months, you know, some are like 1 week, not many. Most are like 3 months, 4 months, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, that kind of thing. And committing specifically to that time is just hyper intentional. It's very intentional and very powerful. And it's not about if you're doing a 6 months journey, it doesn't mean it's more intense. It's just longer. You'll probably have less intense things to do in it. Because remember, your ego is never deciding. It's always your intuition, your higher self that's choosing the things that you're committing to. And so in that way you can trust it. And then you can trust yourself if you follow through with it.
Yeah.
Hey, beautiful. You look excited. I'm happy.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
So welcome, Morgan. Okay, that one took longer than I thought. I'm
Yeah.
still ready and willing
Thank
for
you
you to
very
go
much,
to the door.
Alex.
Oh, you're so
I
welcome.
also I also have to leave. Morgana, thank you for putting yourself out there. I actually learned a lot from listening to you, and just the teaching you had, Alex, about the speaking your truth also resonated. So thank you.
Thank you,
So
Louise.
welcome, so welcome. It's good to hear your voice, Louise. Okay, maybe next time you'll be the participant if you come to the next one.
It's so fun. I had the energy. I got what I apparently came for.
Okay, you look like you did. So, what was that, by the way? What do you feel like you got?
The thing about the Enneagram, that the 5/1 is related to number 8. It
Yeah.
blows my mind still. I'm still like working on it because my husband is a 5/12 and he's definitely an 8. And he has 38 in his sun. So the warrior energy in him is very obvious.
Yeah.
But if I have to integrate that part and kind of like, if that's my higher self going there, it takes a little bit of shadow work because I'm avoiding a lot of conflicts.
Well, exactly.
And
That's your journey.
of course, we had a lot of conflict. We've been married for like 200 years, and I just don't like conflicts anymore. It's just too hard on my nervous system. I'm just like, no, 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 no. So I'm people pleasing so much these days, also with teenagers in the house, and I have no power in the outer world anymore. I'm just like all feminine, and so much suppressed anger. But I'm afraid that it goes out because if I'm going to be the 8, I actually like see myself as a 2 in the Enneagram. I'm
Well,
so
sounds like
loving, but I'm
a
so
nine.
angry. I just have a lot of suppressed anger.
Nine.
Yeah, but also caring. Like I have a 27, gate 27 in my
Yeah, so
personality.
you might be both. I was 2 and 9 as well, right? That's the point. Like on if you apply the Enneagram types to your human design charts, you'll see that you'll have most, if not all, the types appear there to varying.
And I just feel like killing someone soon. Just like having my own space, kill someone. I'm so, but every time I get angry, someone get hurt. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh.
Well,
So
that's
it's
it. Like, have you heard of sacred rage?
a secret rage.
Sacred.
Yes.
So,
Sacred rage.
yeah, seeing rage as sacred and healthily expressing it, punching pillows, smashing shit outside, channeling that anger, tapping into it and making it okay and not shaming it, right? Um, you know, I'd say it's a powerful journey to go on, and you don't want to repress that stuff really because it can lead to illness, not to scare
I
you.
know.
But any
But
repressed
being a
emotion,
Scorpio, being a Scorpio, I know I can kill people. Like I
oh, you
really feel
can.
that raw energy in my bones. So I always have to like be very wise and observant and like just don't go too deep in the raw material in my
Yeah.
personality because
Well,
that's really
yeah, well, I'm glad you care about us so as not to cuss because I've been stabbed by a Scorpio before. That it does hurt.
it's not good. It kills. It really does with
Yeah.
words and with
Well,
just
that's why
like
I'm promoting healthy, sacred rage expression where it's
yeah.
not projected onto people, but there's a safe container in which to let it out, you know? And people can be that safe container, but you have to get their consent. I had a very fiery Italian girlfriend a while ago, and she helped allow that for me, allow that expression. She very much made it okay for me to be angry where, as a 9, which I'd shamed. So it was very healing for me to give my, receive permission from another and then give myself permission to, okay, I'm going to lean in and try this and make it okay. Right.
Mm.
And the thing is, what I'll tell you about your journey to the 8 is don't look at as becoming your husband or his version. If he's already an 8, his version of an 8 is going to be entirely different to yours, especially if you're coming from a 2 or a 9. My 8 looks nothing like someone who was conditioned to be an 8, right? Who are actually quite
Mhm.
loud and dominant and strong and powerful and all that stuff. Mine's a quiet power. And actually what I found is as I lean into accepting my anger and my ability to have a sword and wield it is that I actually don't need to wield it. I can keep my sword sheathed. Just knowing that it's there is enough to deter, really. It really
Mhm.
is. And I did lean into expressing anger in a more volatile way I thought that was like masculine, but it was wrong for me to do so actually. I actually resolved one conflict where I was trying the masculine way, the hyper masculine way, and I ended up it was actually my 9, my more was more true, my true nature to be a diplomat, to be a peacemaker, to be compassionate. That was more powerful and more authentic in the end. But I needed the sword, but I don't need to use it. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you very much for all the work you do. It's very, very interesting to watch your investigator go so deep and also in your writing and very good work.
Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for partaking and thanks
Yeah,
for
I agree with Louise.
what?
I agree with Louise. Your work is amazing. When I saw your work, I was like, wow, because I had a vision a bit similar to yours where I was imagining all of them together. But when I saw your work, I was just thinking, wow, he got that. Yeah.
What do you mean? What part are you referring to?
What did you say?
You said you all of them together. I'm trying
Ah,
to.
the human design with the gene key.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, so when I saw that you were putting all of them together, like it makes so much sense to me, like that you are doing that work. Like I love
Thank
it.
Thank you for saying I love that. Well, I hope to see you both again soon and some of the other group calls. And again, the invitation, extending it to everyone listening in the replay as well. Join the group course. It's going to be more of this deeper and also lots of more esoteric stuff. What planets, including new planets to look at to really understand your conditioning. So it's going to be a much deeper dive into really understanding yourself with some homework and other fun things to really I want it. This is for me, when you learn something like the Enneagram, but the Shadow Keys is what I'm teaching, is it's a psychotechnology. And when you learn it, it's integrated into you. You know, you don't just turn to it for a tool, which you can do, but when you learn it enough, it's there. Like Enneagram is just like a language to me now, and I can filter life through it, and I can see my not self. So when it's integrated, your awareness exponentially increases, you know? So because it's just a filter now you see the world through that supports you.
And so you do consultation as well, right?
Yeah, I do one-on-one things. And this is my first foray into group things, but I've always done one-on-one things in the Shadow Keys more recently, but also as a shaman and healer prior to this work.
I would be very interested to do something with you.
Okay, that's beautiful. Well, I'd love to work with you, Morgan. Anyway, thank you so much. I've enjoyed
Thank
speaking to you.
you.
Good
Lots of
night.
love.
Good
All
day.
right.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye bye.
Bye.